What's up, everybody? The internet is full of people showing you finished compositions, but how do you create something from scratch? How do you think about it? How do you make a plan of attack? How do you create and then develop a vision? Well, I don't know. Do I look like a scientist? Today I'm lucky enough that my friend Ollie from Frankfurt has sent me some stems, and he's like, Oscar, I'd love to see what your techno pseudonym Torque would do with this. So I'm like, yeah, let's listen to the stems together, and then I'm gonna grab a sheet of paper and I'm gonna draw out sort of my mind map of how I'm going to attack this. And then I'm gonna set my little kitchen timer, and I'm gonna do 2 hours of generating material. And then we're gonna look at the material that I generated together. Does that sound like a good time to you? Because it does to me. Let's get into it. When you've got a bunch of stems like this, you can just drag them into the empty space, hold down Command, and they'll be arranged vertically. Oh, that could be a whole track, just this. We're definitely using an idea like this in our track. This is the original kick. This is awesome, but it's also really busy. So like in a techno track, there's only so many things that you can put in there before everything starts to distract from everything else. So it's going to be a question of which of these elements are we going to give visibility? Where are we going to shine the spotlight at any given moment before it becomes a bit too hectic? So I think I want something that's a bit more stripped down, a bit more focused, but maybe we can still find a way to incorporate those layers anyway. That little sound I find very characteristic for the song, very close to its DNA. So. Now, these chords are also very iconic in their own way, and I feel like the moment you put in something that changes chords, like a chord progression, it changes the vibe of the song entirely into a certain direction, which I'm not sure yet that that's what I want for this remix. But I'm going to keep it up there with my favorite stems to explore. All right, now that's the material that we've got to work with. So now let's make our own mind map of where we want to go with this construction. Let's go. Okay, let's think of our composition as a box. Let's think of it kind of like this. And we've got top to bottom, the high frequencies, the low frequencies, and the mids. And now we just got to figure out what we want in the box and where. And for me, when we're talking about hypnotic techno, I'm particularly thinking about pretty tough and textured low end groove. This is my protagonist in the low end, and it's supposed to have an attitude that kind of stretches into the mids and speaks a little bit to the highs, to some textures in the highs. So this low end groove, it's really like, let's say, the main element. So I need it to be audible and present all the way into the high frequencies. And it needs to operate like a unit. This whole thing comes in and out as one thing. We're not going to mute the kick, but not the rumble. We're going to mute everything at the same time. Then there's the high frequencies, which to me are fairly straightforward in the sense that I'm just going to want a dense cloud of functional hi-hats. These are the hi-hats that you bring in and out to modulate the energy level of your track. So you add hi-hats, you remove hi-hats as you feel that the energy of your track needs to ebb and flow. These don't need to have any crazy kind of character, but they do need to mesh very well with the tip of the low end groove. Together they're sort of the yin and the yang of the energy. This is supposed to pull your energy a bit more down, and this is supposed to pull your energy a bit more up. So between the two that you get really dancey. This is going to include a closed hi-hat at least. This is going to include an open hi-hat at least. This is going to include a ride at least, and various types of splashes and reverses. That's the minimum for this, right? And now for me, this is the infrastructure of our track. This is the high and the low infrastructure, but now there's a big hole in the middle for the DNA or the character. The element that's really going to define the track, I feel like, is going to be in the mids. And so the question that we need to ask ourselves is, what is going to live here in the mids? What are its features? For example, the moment you put a chord progression in here, you start to think in terms of synthesizer music, you start to think in terms of what notes are going to be interesting. And on the flip side, we could choose not to do something very harmonic, we could do something very percussive and focus on percussive rhythms in here. For example, in our stems, there was this sound. This lives somewhere between the mids and the highs, but it's very percussive and it's got very little pitch information. So we're not thinking about melody, we're thinking about rhythm. Similarly, there's this sick rumble sound, which is going to live somewhere near the low end groove. It's going to be one layer that completes this low end groove. But this sound is very much a mid-range sound. So that's going to fill up almost this entire space if we put it in. So we have to think quite carefully about how are we going to put this in the mids, because it risks taking up all the attention. So that's our little diagram. We've got low end groove, a high end groove, and something in the mid, some kind of percussive motif that allows us to sustain the identity and the interest of the track in the mids. I'm going to set this timer as a commitment to get to work. And after 2 hours, we're going to look together at what I've generated. All right, it's been longer than 2 hours. I know I should turn on my white light, but I don't wanna. Welcome to Pink Oscar. I'm not gonna lie, it's been a good session. I've got something that I'm pretty happy about. What I've got is a bunch of layers in the low that complete a groove like this. And then into that, there's a synthesizer line. And for me, this is the core groove. This is what we're going to be working with. Then there's a high group as well, like this. It's got a couple of layers, all with a lot of grit and texture in them. Really enjoying it. A lot of focus on that upbeat hi-hat. And then at a certain point, you go into the open hi-hats as well. Injects a lot of energy into this composition. So together with the groove and the kick, you get something like. So if you recall our diagram, we've got the low end and the high end pretty much sorted now. And so now my priority was really taking the DNA of the original track and tried to make sure that it all kind of works together. For example, the metallic riff was really busy, so what I've done is I put an envelope on there, muting a lot of it, so that only in these moments you actually get some sound from it. Then of course there's a bunch of processing, probably unnecessarily, but especially this little bit of echo boy gives a little bit of dimension. Now I've got some mid percussion as well, which is like 16 note grooves. It helps anchor this as an upbeat song, not a half tempo song. At some point that becomes this kind of snare roll here. Then we keep in this ARP run, this little, keep that in. Do you remember those busy chords? These? I decided to just cut them up and put them through a portal so that they become kind of atmospheric. That's this one. It's now become this like cloud. So when I put it with the groove, here's the cloud. See, it just kind of adds atmosphere and mood. Then there's this bit crushed percussion, which is pretty much straight from the original as well. Then one of the elements that became one of my favorites was these kind of cinematic plucks. It's like they play such a non-obvious melody that they really kind of add mystery to the whole thing. Now I spent some time sending some patterns to my synthesizers as well and created a whole group of elements here, all these pink layers, that creates all sorts of like ambient ear candy that's supposed to stay kind of out of the low mids. I don't want it to be in the low mids because that's where so many other elements are already. And then I create a little mini break here where kind of a loud motif takes over that mimics the main bass line. Let's listen to it all together. Let's listen to this break. And then we're back to this like hypnotic world. And for me, the key here is this stab, which I actually found kind of like when I listened to it the first time, it didn't spark any joy. But then when I placed it here on the downbeats, it really creates this like splash of energy. Listen to it again. Oh, love that. And that's it. That's the material that I gathered and the sort of loop that I made, which is kind of like a sketch arrangement in the sense that I duplicated the loop and removed the kick drum for a section to create a simulated mini break. And so now what I'm going to do with this is take some distance. I'm going to listen to this extended loop a little bit on my ear pods in different situations, decide if I'm really happy with all the elements, and then move into an arrangement where it's going to become like a 5-minute track that has this like slowly evolving energy that eases you into it as well, because right now it's still a bit busy, but with the right kind of easing in, I think it's going to work out. I created an abundance of elements as well, so I still have the freedom to mute many elements and to only feature certain elements in certain sections of the song. But one thing that I'm fairly committed to now is at least the groove, the overall, that dum 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 dum, that kind of groove. I'm not going to go back on that, and sort of the deepness of it and the focus on that little deep bass line in the middle. I think that really makes it groovy and that adds, yeah, this kind of depth and nuance to it that I feel like you can just get lost in. So anyway, I'm also going to send this to my friends Todor and Pierre from XY Secret, the label, to get their opinion on what they think of this, and then hopefully maybe finalize it in a way that it can go out into the world. That'll be for a different video though, because that's all I can do on camera for today. If you want to take away a key learning from today, maybe I would suggest that you make a diagram like this, based it on some of the music that you love the most. How would you draw it in an abstract way? And can you then use that drawing as a roadmap for yourself in your own next production? What does the music that you listen to even look like when you draw it out? I kind of wish I could see all the responses to that. Come show it to us on the Discord channel. Anyway, remember that you can learn from me in a more structured context on one of the courses on my website. Leave a comment and like the video to show me some love. And until next time, stay producing, be good to each other, and take care. Bye-bye.